Games. Board games and LARPs, it's what we're talking about. Board games are arts, it's not what we're talking about. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing. And of course, there's a person that is me, and there's another person over there that's Chloe. Chloe has a blue dress, which I've observed. And why are we talking about colors of clothes? That's kind of absurd, but I guess let's talk about LARP. Let's talk about LARP. It's what we're talking about. I'm trying to make a LARP and I'm not gonna shout. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. It is 10 a.m.ish UK time. Time for Busy Beats and Board Game Blether. And Chloe Mashiter over there is going to give me some advice. I'm trying to get something made for this weekend. I know it's kind of last minute and like things and yeah, but like who is Chloe? Like we talked for a while last time that you've worked for all sorts of companies making theatrical stuff and doing role-playing stuff and just enjoying games with a focus on theatre and storytelling and experience rather than games where you strive for a victory.
Yeah, that's very good nutshell.
Chloe, is there anything you would like to tell us about yourself and how would you introduce yourself beyond what I've just said and what people can read at the bottom?
Oh, beyond that, I'm wondering if there's anything like beyond that I can knit.
Cakes or pie? Oh, there we go. That's something.
Cake. Oh, cakes or pie? Cakes, narrowly.
Okay. And good morning, Alex. It is lovely to see you. So this is Alex Cannon, who I don't want to say I hung out with them because at UK Games Expo there's just so much going on, like a week and a half ago, and so I don't really feel like I hung out with anyone except the people that I was sleeping with. And when I say sleeping with, I've been told off for saying that in the past. I just mean sleeping in the same room, if you know what I mean. And so, you know, those people, we had a good conversation. The people that I was driving with, sure, we had a good chat. But even the people at my stand, like, who are helping me, it feels like until we were actually back at the hostel, there you go. We chatted briefly at the hotel bar, and Alex was spending like a good few hours at my stand showing off Biddabell, but otherwise fleeting greetings, absolutely. Just the nature of UK Games Expo.
I couldn't go to UK Games Expo, but I've seen like little bits, and one of the few little bits I've seen is someone holding and like hugging a massive balloon filled with balloons outside your stall.
Amazing. Yeah, I was really proud of that. And hello, Vivan, it's lovely to see you. Have you been to UK Games? Actually, let's roll the banner and let's talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights. So, have you been to UK Games Expo in the past?
Yes.
Oh, cool. And what is your opinion? And what else would you like to tell us about recent stuff?
So yes, I've been to UK Games Expo, I think twice in person and once when they were doing it digitally over lockdowns. I had a lovely time. Partially, I think, because I wasn't like making games by that point, so I was just going around and like seeing all these cool new games and playing things and hanging out with friends.
What's going on?
I didn't have like some of the stress that I assume can come from all that kind of aspect.
Yeah, when you're actually trying to get something achieved and when there's an objective, it feels like at that point you've got the potential to sort of be disappointed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. For me, it's also it's kind of probably not as extreme, but it's the same thing as like if you go to the Edinburgh Fringe to just watch stuff, and if you go up with a show, like your metric for having a good time is very different.
I mean, you say it's not as extreme, and I've never done a show at the Edinburgh Fridge, but I think it is along the same lines. And Alex, thank you for. I'm glad you enjoyed the balloons. And morning, Kelly. It is lovely to see you. Um, so yeah, talking more about recent highlights. What have you been up to in the past week? What do you get up to when you're not at UK Games Expo? I hear that you've helped organise something going on in Nigeria.
I've been helping. Like, we were both part of the game design camp at Now Play This, and so on Saturday, our partner camp, Nib Card Games in Abuja in Nigeria, we're having a playtest. I've been helping them with some of the coordination there, and that was really cool. I got to see like a few of the games that they were trying out over their live stream and things like that. And the reason that I wasn't at UK Games Expo was because I was at this literary festival, which was like in this little field. It was like 5 tents. It was so lovely. I was there talking about writing for interactive work.
Do you mean like big marquee things, or do you mean little like 4-person tents?
I'd say the smallest one was probably like could fit about 16, 20 people at a squeeze. And so they kind of like went a little bit up from there, but it was really lovely. It was a literary festival, but you had people from comics there. You had people doing nature walks and saying how their work related to nature and using that as like springboards for stories. And in the evening, I was part of a team doing like a kind of conversational mega game type thing. It was just like a really fun day, and it was nice to kind of be out of London and go in a field for a bit.
Can you tell us more about this conversational mega game? Because I know there's multiple people in your audience, myself and Kel, who actually run events and might be interested in this.
Sure. I say conversational mega game because I'm kind of not sure how else to put it. Especially because
things.
Yeah, we were doing also like a very low tech thing. So it was like, we don't have Wi-Fi, we're in the middle of a field, etc. But basically, it's called Red Planet Revolution, and it's something that I've been involved with Upstart Theatre. And basically, you will arrive. You are people who either like you live on Mars. You're citizens of Mars, and you represent the full spectrum of everyone who currently lives on Mars. Like, we used a very clever algorithm to get you all here. You represent everyone's different like backgrounds, beliefs, perspectives, etc. on Mars. And we are just about to finish our revolutionary actions to declare Mars independent from kind of the future, declare it independent from, big bad corporation type stuff. And so it's a little bit about finalizing like what we want Mars's identity to be. So it's, what's our flag going to be? What are our leading principles? How do we kind of figure that out between different cities? Everyone's kind of grouped into like their cities that have different industries and identities. How do we do those things? What is our like statement of independence going to be, etc.? What's our capital going to be? Do we even need one? And then you get to kind of declare independence, and it's about dealing with the first few issues and what that means for the identity of your independent Mars, and doing a lot of like kind of weird riffing improv-y stuff. Because the one we did on Saturday, it became a lot about conversation and people having like very big ideas, partially because when you come in, you get given a little card and it just has like 2 sentences of like your relationship to Mars. Were you born here? Did you move here? Have you been going back and forth? And then just like a reason you got involved in the revolution. Maybe you just think this is the only chance to build a kind society. Maybe you just want a lot of power. Maybe people from the revolution are the only ones who helped you when you were really down. And people can role play into that as much as they like. And so we got some people like really going for that.
Is this all something that you wrote and designed?
It's co-wrote with Tom Mansfield and also Rihanna Dearden. Tom is one of the folks who runs Upstart Theatre, and Rihanna.
Just him or a group of 3, including you?
It was just us 3.
It was. So you were
who
part of
wrote it.
the trio making this game, and it sounds quite character light, rules light. People are injecting lots of themselves by default because when you're role playing, some of yourself always kind of seeps through, I think. And it sounds like, I mean, I'm imagining this was a relatively short thing, like 1 or 2 hours or 1 hour.
Yeah, it was, I think, an hour and a half it ran out.
Okay.
It's quite a short light one, because that way it fits into, we've done it at like theatre festivals and stuff, rather than say like the kind of mega games that will be a full day or such like.
And it's really interesting, the idea of like what is a mega game, because I mean, you could play Wordy Connections, the thing that I made at Now Play This, with hundreds of people theoretically, and I would love to see that happen. But I mean, maybe if enough people come to my leaving do, then that would happen. But
I love the idea of having like so many people playing it that you're writing like some kind of Homeric epic, like by the end of it. That would be so good.
But like it's this kind of tiny thing which is meant to last like 10 minutes. And I actually asked on Twitter, can anyone, I'm going to define this new idea, mega party game. So it has to play at least 30 people. And the one person who was able to give ideas of what I would call existing mega party games was Elizabeth Hargrave, who gave a bunch of ideas for stuff that was kind of open source. Stuff that had been designed for camps, which is really cool. Alex says, your game sounds awesome. Kel says, Kel would totally love something like that at KCON. That sounds amazing. So potentially, if you want to come together.
Get in touch.
So, yes, you might be able to find Chloe Mashiter. Let me send the links. Actually, I've not done that. Carry on talking.
But I think mega party games is such a good term, and annoyingly, I don't think I can say much about it. But a friend of mine is a board game and like generally a games maker, and it was his birthday a couple of weeks back, and we played like a mega party game. There were about 20 of us, and it was about an hour and a bit, and it was so much fun. And I'm worried that I can't really say anything because it's like still in progress, still in development. But it was that kind of thing where it's like a fun structure for a lot of like social nonsense and having light fun with people for a little while. Thank you for the links, Bez.
Not at all. Can I share your Facebook profile link? Is that permissible?
As long as it's the roll, flip, draw one rather than my personal one, because I think my personal one might be private.
Okay, I was just going to do it as a way to get you and Kelly in touch. But you know what? I can just write a message right now to you and Kelly, and yeah, I will write ping, and you can sort out things later.
So, thank you so much.
And Alex says, a cross between Two Rooms and a Boom and Don't Get Got. Yeah, I've got... I'm not going to get into my issues with Don't Get Got. I have, some issues with it, and I feel like Two Rooms and a Boom, it's like a really solid game. I feel it's like slightly on the upper limit of what I would define as a mega party game. It feels like it's on the upper limit of complexity. Because even though it feels really simple if you're a gamer, if you are teaching someone who hasn't played that many games, there is a lot going on there. And it feels like a game that you need to play multiple times to be really proficient at talking to people, doing all the negotiation. And a quick hello to Timmy. But any quick thoughts, or let's move to question, pretty quick questions is the next section. It's not an interrogation, it's just a question, pretty quick question section. So, are hot dog sandwiches?
Yes.
Okay. Is tea good?
Is what good?
Tea.
Yes, it's incredible. It's great. It's more than good.
What is the best tea?
The best tea is bog standard breakfast tea. I am incredibly basic with tea, but I don't care. It's this color. I can't really show you because I've drunk too much because it's that good. There you go.
Then, like, if you show too much, then the camera, it will kind of start.
I'll just pour it all over my laptop. Is what I'll do.
Yeah. Do you agree with Timmy that cereal is soup?
I think I kind of have. You know what? No, I'm gonna hold off on cereal being soup just because it's two things put together. It's not two things like cooked together or made together. You can have cold soup like gazpacho, but that still involves actually like cooking it together. And I think it's the assemblage part of cereal that prevents it from being soup for me.
So because the assemblage is too simple, it's not quite soup. If it was like if you had porridge that was hypothetically, if this porridge was a bit more liquidy than porridge should be, and it still had milk going on, would that be soup?
See, now I'm in the weeds, and I've got myself in a corner where I have to go. If it's overnight oats porridge where no heat has been applied, no cooking has happened, it's not soup. If it's just porridge where heat has been applied and cooking has happened, it's soup. Which I know I'm in a really precarious position here.
I can get that. Like, you've got to draw a line somewhere, and that is where you personally draw the line. It doesn't mean that other people are wrong. It's just that's what's going on. Timmy says Pop-Tarts are sandwiches. Do you agree?
I don't think so because they're closed on every single side, and surely that's more of a what are they called? Calzones. Is it a Pop-Tart kind of a calzone?
Yeah, you've got to have open edges to be a sandwich.
There's got to be some open. Yeah.
An open club sandwich with just one slice of bread and stuff on top is not a sandwich. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know, because my brain's just now started going to like toasted sandwiches, which when you take them out of the sandwich toaster are closed on all sides. So maybe I have to. Maybe Timmy's right, and Pop-Tarts are sandwiches. In which case, calzones have to be sandwiches as well.
Alex and hello XXL Black Sheep asks, Jaffa cakes, are they a cake or a biscuit? I mean, I person like to this.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Jaffa cake person, but the general wisdom is cakes go hard. Is it cakes go hard when they're stale, biscuits go soft, or something like that? Is how they were like proving it in court.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think is I don't know Jaffa cakes well enough to. They proved they were a cake, right? Technically. Oh no, or did they prove they were a biscuit? I can't remember what they did with the whole tax thing.
Basically, you're happy to go along with whatever was proved in court.
Yeah, whatever the legal precedent is for Jaffa cakes.
We'll go with that. Kel wants to say, I use a soup spoon for my cereal and a dessert spoon for my soup. I don't know what anything is anymore. Yeah, I love it. Break out all the rules. I use tiny spoons with really long handles, which I think are meant for cappuccinos. I just use them for all the desserts, and when I want to feel fancy, it's a long handle. And Alex says they wanted it to be a biscuit because of tax purposes, but they aren't. They are actually a cake. And so that's what we'll go with. Alex, again, these are calzones. And hello, Jane. It's lovely to see you. As mentioned before, cakes go dry when stale, biscuits go soft. And the final question I will allow is, if a banana spontaneously appeared every time you sneezed, how would that make you feel? How would that change your life?
I think it would make me feel largely quite good. Because, like, I think a big part of this depends on what state is the banana getting to me in. If it's like perfectly ripe and it's good for the eating, great. If it's like, oh, I'm going to have to wait for 3 days for this to be ripe, and by the time it's actually ripe, I'm going to forget about it, and then I won't have eaten it, and it'll go, like, that will just bring a lot. If the banana isn't at a good state of ripeness, I will feel so stressed. if the
I
banana
mean, I feel
appears
like if it's not yet ripe, at least you can potentially go give it away to someone. I mean, this could be like a full sort of bananas, just giving away bananas. If when you've got a cold, give away all your bananas. But then the worst thing would be if they were horrible and black and mushy, and then they were landing on your head. Like, imagine if every time you sneeze, like this banana goo went onto your head.
in chat, it appears as ripe as you feel, has been said. So in that case, I feel blessed. I feel great. I would, if I was going to meet some friends for a picnic, I would stash some pepper in my bag to see if I could like make myself sneeze.
It would be an amazing party trick, yeah. I think I would totally change my life and try to, when I'm feeling good, try to make myself sneeze more. I like the pepper trick.
Yeah. I did have a friend in sixth form who I don't see as much now, who did have a huge phobia of bananas. So I think that would be the one scenario where I'd be like terrified of sneezing. But that's a very rare, like tiny window of time.
I mean, I've got people who really hate bananas, but never someone who's terrified of them. So yeah, I feel like we're both, this is a good thing. Let's bring on the free bananas and let's sneeze more. Okay, so let's talk about brilliant things. Brilliant things. What's the little thing which is brilliant? Why is making LARPs a brilliant thing? Why should I feel happy and blessed to be making a LARP? Why should I feel like I am brilliant?
Okay.
And like this is a brilliant opportunity rather than a massive stressful thing.
So making LARPs is a brilliant thing, and you should feel brilliant because you're creating a wonderful space for other people to create in. You're giving them that amazing gift of a place where where you can break down feelings of self-consciousness and things like that to let them explore and play in a really lovely, wonderful way. And I think that's a really brilliant thing. You're giving them also like a chance to explore characters and scenarios that the stuff that I see people write LARPs about, my brain just like can't figure out how they came up with such incredible, cool, distinctive scenarios that, often like are beyond what I see in a lot of other media. So I think that's a brilliant thing about LARP. I think you're giving people like a very cool, wonderful escape that they're also going to come away from being like, I had a brilliant time there, but also I was part of someone else's brilliant time.
That's the hope, that's the ambition, right? And so let's, I don't want to bring negativity into the brilliant thing section, so let's just leave it at that. That is the ideal, that's the goal. And if people want to comment, ask questions, follow, then do all that stuff. But yeah, now let's get into this. So I did send you something. I don't know if you had a look at it. I will.
I've had a chance to look through it. Yeah.
What's this pageless? Oh, I've never heard.
Oh, that's a new thing. I don't know. It's.
Yeah,
I'm sticking with pages.
Boom.
I mean, you can try it if you want. It might just go.
So this is without pages. Okay, cool. Anyway, so basically, there are 7 people. This is a LARP that I was planning to make for 2020, and of course, actually 2021. I want to say, because I definitely remember I was like, oh, we might be able to get this done. No, the thing isn't happening. And I had these ideas. I was starting to do research into all the stuff, and like, I am kind of floundering, is the truth, Chloe. And I've kind of written this thing, and it's like, okay, this could happen, and yeah, what's going on? So there's 7 people, although I hear 8 people at this point have signed up. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 characters, but I could take 2 of them away if I really need to, and not all of them have been fully written. And I've got a little bit of story about all of these that you might have seen me doing quite a bit of the writing before, where these characters embody different aspects, they react to each other in different ways, and it's about how each character feels about the other character and then get to the bottom where and hello XXL Black Sheep, who's got a wee credit there for sparking the warrior and giving some extra help, and Zololvi, who earlier on gave me some help. But yeah, what I wanted to ask you is, what are my next steps and what should I be aiming for? What is ultimately needed for this to be a good LARP? Because I'm coming to it from the perspective of, yeah, sure, I've made a lot of games, but the games I've made are very different. They're like wee party games, or they're, colouring in things where people are just doing stuff. There's not much of a narrative. There even sees the power. It's about this very involved framework, if you know what I mean, of rules. And whereas for a LARP, you don't want these rules, but then, like, what do you do to spark, the motivations and give people something to latch onto when they're creating their own story? Because for sure, it feels like in a LARP or in a story game, the players are far more sharing the ownership of being the artist and collaborating with the rules set, you know what I mean, the writer.
Yeah. So I want to start with a quick question to you.
Yes,
just because for me it's important to kind of go, every LARP is going to be different. What works for every LARP is going to be different. They're often like very distinct little beasts. So with yours, because it's about kind of fantasy characters in a therapy situation, like for me, what immediately seems really fun and exciting there is, how do these characters express emotions, seeing them kind of get better at doing that, seeing the interplay between the different people and where kind of relationships manage to progress and where they kind of regress a little bit, and playing with what like healing looks like to them over kind of a bit of a period of time. Is there any of that for you is like kind of not what you're interested in here, or are there bits that I haven't mentioned that you're like, this is why this scenario is really interesting and exciting to me?
I mean, I think that the key part for me is the subversion, the idea that not everything is as it appears. And it did come from the notion of, yeah, when you're killing all these monsters, you never really think about it when you're going through the dungeons, and you're never. And I know there's been like a comic about that. I think it was called like Goblins or something, like a webcomic, like putting the goblin. But it's like, yeah, what happens about the little Minotaur babies that they didn't. Not all these characters that you come across actually attack you. Maybe they were just doing their job. Maybe this was just their home. And maybe the mayor is actually the big baddie who's just kind of lying and being a horrible politician and trying to accrue wealth. And I think that subversion and kind of, but I do want the tone to be fairly light. I don't want it to be triggering. I do talk about mental health, but I want it to be sort of real, but at the same time, not so real that people are, oh yeah, I've got to take a break from this.
Yeah. Well, in light of like, especially kind of like subverting the classic kind of adventurer's perspective and things like that, what I'm about to kind of throw out something like quite substantial. And so you are welcome to go, Chloe, that's lovely that you want to give advice. That's quite a lot. But this is just because my brain tends to work in terms of structures and overall like world coherence. So sometimes things that I offer are quite like big. What I think you could play with that could be really interesting is, you've got obviously the therapy session, but some LARPs use almost like a kind of 3-act structure, where the first third will have a certain theme, as well will the second and the third. So you could have 3 therapy sessions, which have slightly different themes to show kind of people healing or dealing with things, whether you go from like fear to accusations to bonds, or like repairing friendships or something. And you could have like also just a tiny bit of time between those, because like I really like the idea that say you've got one of the adventurers you start off with their character sheet of like, this is the initial thing that happened. You were, thought you were defeating a dragon, but you weren't. Okay, so if they become aware of that in the first session, they start reckoning with that. What happens between the first therapy session and the second therapy session that might spark a little bit more? So are they given something that says, you got in a fight and whilst no one was hurt, you did just destroy a bakery, and you're wrestling with your guilt over that? Because I think with LARPs, you can still kind of pepper in structure as you go, or pepper in little prompts, or kind of more little sparks as you go. So there could be some nice things there of, if you have like session time between therapy session, you can always pump in a little bit more if you're a bit worried about there not being quite enough to play off of, is like my first thought.
Yeah, I really like that. And what I've written down is maybe like the first one could be about the realization of what's going on. Then the second one, I mean, again, feel free to modify this and like give me more ideas, but like then it would be acceptance and bonding potentially. And then the third one would be like moving on or not.
Yeah, there's something really nice and like realizing how you seem to other people, and then kind of trying to marry that with how you see yourself. And then the moving on could be a really interesting thing of, what does it look like when the fighter has built healthier ways of coping with stuff, or when the dragon like is more aware of how some of their behaviors seem to people who haven't lived as long and don't have all their knowledge. I think that's a really fun structure. And there's some things that you've... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. I don't want to stop you, just to say that I was kind of thinking about playing almost like a really minimalist Dungeons and Dragons style game, like at the start for literally about 15 minutes. And it's like, this is what we do. And then we roll the dice and it's kind of rigged. But then we have another, but then with like the moving on, what if there were another one where we're like, this is exactly the same Dungeons and Dragons thing, but with different things going on. So now instead of slaughtering everyone, you start talking to people in the dungeon.
That's like, I really love the sound of that. I would really enjoy that as like a way to begin and to kind of bring to an end a game. I think as long as you give people the character prompts at the start, so like, because the people I play games with, they would absolutely like start by talking and fight later. But if they know that their characters are very much those people, then your LARPers will kind of run with that.
But my only question then is that, okay, the adventurers are clearly doing this thing in the kind of, it's almost like a flashback, a recap of what's gone before. But then all the creatures, even though they might have, yeah, exactly, like the kobolds hate you because you murdered their parents. That's exactly the kind of thing that the center like therapy session is all about. But then in that 15-minute LARP set, in that 15-minute sort of dice rolling thing, does that mean that they've basically got to sit to the side? Do you know what I mean? Because they won't even be on camera, which feels a bit weird.
I'm trying to think if there's a good structure you can use that kind of lets the adventurers play out that adventuring vibe, but rather than like, because normally you'd have the GM being the NPCs, you're kind of able to let the other players be the NPCs, and just play out their roles. I guess the slight tension there is going, it feels easier to subvert things from the adventurer's perspective because that's who people normally play in games. Whereas we don't normally, like, just by seeing stuff from the other character's perspective is already kind of the subversion, I guess. I wonder if you could do something where it is kind of still like a D&D-ish or that kind of thing set up, where you've got the adventurers who are rolling dice and things like that, but the other characters, they're never rolling dice, but there is some mechanic that's just them commenting on what they can see and how it makes them feel. Because then you've got kind of the power dynamic of the adventurers thinking that they're the lead thing, and the other characters feeling kind of powerless in the face of them. But they're still contributing to the story. They're still building up their characters with that. They're still kind of developing things. I'm not quite sure precisely how you would do it, and I know that you've only got so much time, but that could even be like the therapist going, okay, let's like reenact this scenario. I've got some tools, I've got some dice for you, and I've got some things for you. We're just going to go over how you see what happened, and you have the adventurers kind of being like, I do this and I do this, and then the therapist throwing to someone and being like,
the dice rolling RPG session is role playing within the therapy session within the LARP. So it's like the role play within the role play. I like it.
Yeah, because there's so many things with therapy where it's like, you know, the things you see on TV where it's like people switch roles and talk as each other. Or there's a really interesting technique where you put someone in a chair. I'm going to really simplify this because I'm not like a neurologist or a psychologist or anything like that. But you put someone in a chair and you get them to populate the space with different people from their life. And they can say, like, they're choosing how far away someone is, who they are represented by in the room, whether they're facing them or not. And so then there's a really strong thing of like, well, if you've got your mum the other side of the room facing the wall away from you, but you've got your dad right next to you with his hand on your shoulder, like leaning in, that immediately tells you a lot about what you feel about your mum and your dad. And I wonder if like you could play with stuff like that with the characters, could be kind of fun. I mean, that's something that you could just have in your toolkit. You don't have to prescribe that it's definitely going to happen. Yeah, but that I think there's a way you could kind of play with like role playing, and even then going, okay, how about we role play it from your perspective, and then suddenly kobolds and orcs and zombies and dragons are the ones who are rolling.
I do wonder if, in that case, having a map and miniatures to say, this is what we did, and this is what happened, and this was the situation, and then everybody kind of, even though normally LARP and improv theatre is a case of yes and, within these flashbacks, you could kind of say on the character sheets, this is a case where you do no but, as in you are allowed to say that's not actually what happened, and you are allowed to make assumptions about the other characters, and if someone makes an assumption about you, you are allowed to readdress those assumptions about your character and your family, and maybe these are the parts that each player has dominion over, if you know what I mean. So maybe the dragons are just, they get to have the ultimate truth over anything that involves the dragon, and like the mayor, they don't actually get to say the truth at all because they're a villain. So the whole point is that they're constantly lying and are not kind of coming to terms with it. When she rolled a natural 20, how did that make you feel, says Alex. And but I do like this, even setting that to the side, having these free therapy sessions of let's do this, and then it will be like, okay, we'll meet together in 1 week, and then maybe I'll literally send everyone out of the room and say, okay, get to drink now, come back in like 2 minutes, and then this is like the second therapy session in a week later, and we have a quick.
And, yeah, either they use that just as like a little break, or it could be during that break, think of one breakthrough, like however big or small your characters had, and one setback. So like one time they've struggled, one time they feel like they've achieved a thing, and even that just gives them a little bit new to come in, and you can then just like open up like a therapist, being like, how was the last week for everyone? Like, how are you feeling? How was the last week? And I think in terms of, just so I don't forget to say it, you were saying about like, how do you kind of set things up to spark stories and help people create stories, there's a few things you've done for like a couple of your character sheets, like character info already, that is really useful, that I think if like applied to some other characters, because like with a few of them you've kind of gone like ultimately what you want is an apology, or you want reassurance or something like that, or you want to just like get away with it and not take blame for things. I think if everyone has like, what do you actually like, what do you want out of this therapy, and sometimes it can be what do you want from someone else. Like I was part of a stream game that was just like at a festival explaining a load of storytelling mechanics, and they had three of us playing characters, and it was like one of us wanted someone else's love, one of us wanted someone else's sympathy, and one of us wanted someone else's respect. And even just that set up like such good dynamics between us.
And someone else, was that named, or was that just you just want respect in general?
It was a specific other character, so they had three of us being characters, and they were like, okay, out of the other two, like, do you want their love, respect, or sympathy? And then when someone had chosen, say, respect, they went to another person and they were like, okay, out of the other two, do you want their love or their sympathy? And then the other person would take one more thing. And it just, setting up those dynamics can be so useful, because it's just a thing people can kind of like come back to.
Yeah, and I guess that this sort of character motivation, even though, sure, there is bleed, but I think that in a LARP, in a storytelling game, players are more separate from, you know, their character motivations. If you assume that in a strategic game, your character motivation is to win the game, as a player, you're kind of embroiled in that, and I don't think there's ever a time when someone says, actually, I'm not going to win the game. Like, people would normally, whoa, that's completely wrong. How dare you play the game and not try to win? Which I think makes sense, because a lot of games, if my opponent isn't trying to win, I'm going to have a bad time. If I'm trying to win, then my victory is hollow. But, when it's about a storytelling activity, and it's like, this is what my character is trying to achieve, but most people who are coming have the awareness that it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to get those things. And sometimes even within the story, you can, but it does help guide you. So what I've already got is, this is how these people make you feel. But what you're telling me is that that's fine and that's good, but I also need to have, this is what you want from these individual characters to foster some sort of connection and
I think
action.
Yeah, I'm loath to say like need, but I think it's a useful thing to have. I think it's like, it kind of like, there's two ways to do it almost, of like why you think you're at therapy, like what you would openly admit to, and maybe there's like a more buried reason of what you actually need from therapy, and part of the game can be realizing what that thing is in character, or it's just that it's very transparent. You kind of know what you're trying to get out of therapy, and it's working through that. But I think even if it's a goal that they might not achieve, and a lot of LARPers are used to the idea that, like, your character failing to do something still can make for a good story. It's nice to have a thing where it's like, what your character wants, what is trying to get out of this scenario. And I think there's one other thing that you threw in, which is really lovely, is how some characters have trouble expressing emotions. Like, you can't express emotion unless you're talking through song, or you just struggle to express it. Because that's such a fundamental part of like that therapy setup, is expressing like how you feel, and like interrogating and being curious about your feelings. Thinking about how different fantasy characters might struggle articulating feelings is so fascinating, and I think is a really like fun role play thing as well.
Okay, that sounds like that's a lot of things I can actively work on. And a quick hello to Matt, who was also at UK Games Expo and was given a balloon full of balloons that's slowly turning white, which is really interesting to see. I get these images I mean, I'd love to have daily images. That would be a nice thing to wake up to. But Matt's still got this balloon, and the transparent one outside is slowly turning white. But then the red balloons inside are still red. So there's red balloons inside and then a transparent balloon outside. And so it's kind of, and I'm really interested to see, will it actually pop at some point? Or will it, rather than shrinking, will it kind of turn into a weird shape because of
Yeah.
all the balloons inside? So it's kind of covering them all. But I'm really interested to see what happens there. And but yeah, this has given me, okay, so there's the parts of the game that I would like to write. So if this is the game flow, it feels like the let's reenact this at the start and let's roleplay how you would act in the future is kind of like the wish list. That's like the ultimate thing that will make it. But
Yeah.
what I really need to have is the characters just a little bit more fleshed out, and what you want from therapy, what you want from the other characters. What would you say are the main parts that I need between now and Saturday? Because like I tried to set up playtests, but yeah, it's just really hard getting
It's
playtests for RPGs. And I talked to David Brain and Ellie last week about playing it at National Theatre, but then they were saying, it might be a bit awkward because it's in a public space and people might be a bit not so comfortable, even setting aside the fact that it's a bit of a short slot. It's less comfortable doing that than something where, to an outside observer, you're not being an umpty, you're just rolling some dice or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And yeah, it's also like hard to do playtests when you need 10 people, say, to really like feel something out. Ones with larger numbers are always tricky. In terms of like between now and Saturday, I would say if you're able to, for each character, be like, this is what you're hoping to get out of therapy, this is what you're struggling with. You don't necessarily even need to pre-write this is what you want from another character. You could just bake in time before like the therapy role play starts. If you've got all the characters and people know what character they're playing, they know that kind of bit of backstory, then you could literally go, you want something from the person on your right, and just like talk that through beforehand, and then they can bring their own ideas and you don't even need to write a thing. I'd say from my perspective, though, it's totally fair if you as a designer are like, it's very specifically this for what I want to achieve. I think the events that all connect to each other, of like, well, the mayor wanted people to do this, the adventurers went to the dragon's cave, the beekeeper got hurt, or the bees got hurt during that adventure. I'd have that as like one clear story, so just everyone knows like how it fits together. Because at the moment it's between different character sheets, and it's good to have like your part on the character sheet, but it makes it hard to know like the order of events. Like, and that can be useful just to have. I don't think people will like meta, but just like making sure there's a really clear shared idea of what's going on in the room. I think knowing what safety tools you'd like to use, just in case stuff gets intense, as it might. Like there's the classics, there's cut break, there's look down, there's the door is open, but just having those ready so you can take people through them.
Yep, that's something that, it's so important to have these safety tools. And in this game, I don't think it would matter much if, frankly, half the people needed to leave. So some games, it does lynch upon a couple of key characters. And even though, frankly, even if the mayor left, I think the game would still function fine. Then everyone would be talking about this character. Oh, they're not even able to make it to this therapy session. That's how little they care about us. And I could be part of the role playing. I don't know.
Yeah. Just because it's something that might be in your head, but I didn't see on the document. Timings. Like, do you want to kind of do like a therapy session for 30 minutes and then a little break, and then 30 minutes and a little break and 30 minutes? I don't know how long your time slot is. And just kind of, how are you going to signal to people that the session's over? If you are going to have multiple sessions, is it just there'll be a timer, an alarm will go off, and then you as the therapist will say, that's all the time we've got for today? But just how you signal the end and the beginning of things to people, and how you end the whole experience, because we've got potentially that role-playing game style recap potentially baked into that first session. How do you want to finish things off at the end? I think is a good thing to kind of just be like, I want to finish with every character saying like something they've learned or something they're still going to be struggling with, or what they, you know, how they improve over the next month as like a flash forward, or, you know, whatever you think would be a nice way to kind of just like tie some stuff up.
I'm thinking about the overall story that you've mentioned. That could go on to just one sheet, or, well, I could do both, theoretically. I mean, having that, this is you, this is what happened, but we're going to roleplay this at, like, your characters, you are the adventurer, but now you're the adventurer, role-playing the adventure for like 10 minutes. And at that point, do you actually need dice? Because dice are such a big symbol of Dungeons and Dragons. It kind of feels like, but at the same time, I want, maybe you just roll dice just when you attack, but the numbers doesn't mean anything. And maybe that's part of the rules. Like, you just roll dice whenever you attack, but then the monster decides whether you hit or not and what the result is. And it doesn't have anything to do with the dice. You're just doing there, so you're rolling a bunch of polyhedrons.
Because you're reframing it as like, this is a therapy tool, I think people will accept like that it might be different to stuff. I've just thought of something. Sorry that this is like stream of consciousness. Because we were talking about like subversion and stuff earlier, and just on the thought of why characters might struggle expressing feelings. I wonder if there is something of like, you could feed that in. So like the dragon struggles to express their feelings because they're terrified that no one will ever take them seriously, because everyone always thinks that they sound angry. Like everyone who the dragon, you know, if we're taking kind of how adventurers often interact with dragons on a really like stereotypical way, they're angry, they're a threat, they're a danger, there's something to be scared of. And so the dragon struggles to express its feelings because it doesn't think people take it seriously. Or the mayor struggles to express feelings because like they've had to make so many hard decisions over the years and stuff. They've seen why feelings just aren't useful, because they're the one that has to make the tough decisions, etc. And they're so like baked into that role. Or, you know, the zombie the zombie just really struggles to be understood because everyone seems to assume that it's saying brains or something. I know that's like a different zombie tradition, but or the zombie, like people just think it's being sarcastic or deadpan all the time, because of its tone of voice or something. Or it's the zombie's really not used to people giving it space to speak. People always just automatically attack, and one of the things the zombie struggles with, which could be quite fun as a roleplay thing, is someone's giving me time to speak and no one does that, and I don't. It's been so long since I've had a conversation with people like a human. I don't know what to do with myself because no one gives me this time. Everyone just gets scared. And you could have a really like fun little meaningful character up there.
That's communicating. They just need a bit of time. And is it fun, or is it just a pain in the behind to say anytime you speak, you need to wait 2 seconds before saying anything?
I don't think you need to necessarily like be as specific as like you have to wait 2 seconds. It could just be it takes a long time for you to formulate thoughts into speech because you're just not used to it, and then someone can kind of play that as they want. And also provide, like, I don't know how you're doing character casting, but if people have a bit of choice, then you know you'll end up with, you know, you're only going to have a bard who's comfortable singing, for instance, because you're allowing that to be a choice. And so whoever picks that, like, I would probably like go for something like the zombie thing because I'd be like, that'd be so fun. So I think you could just give it as like kind of a general prompt and see where they run with it.
I really appreciate what you're writing, and I love what Alex says. Yeah, the fighter can't stop thinking that the best way to deal with something is to hit it, and a fighter has to get out of that mindset. And yeah, I feel like I've got to path forwards. I feel like this is achievable. Like, I'm not going to say it's going to be, you know, it's not going to be perfect, and like that's fine, and I've got to accept that. And hopefully, it is slightly terrifying. So, and hello, Ivan. Just to catch up, we are talking about a LARP that we're making. And I'd like questions based on the role playing, and if we could focus on that, please. But yeah, I am slightly terrified that people have paid to be part of this festival, and 8 people apparently have said, this is the game that I want to play for 1/4 of this festival, because you only get 4 slots. So if one of them is really rubbish, then that's kind of quite a big chunk out of your weekend. Mm-hmm. But I mean, and even if it's mediocre, it's a bit disappointing. And yeah, do you have any words of encouragement to overcome that? Because even though I say I'm over it, so I'm not really. I do still have this slight fear of, wow, people have already given, like, kind of, and it's weird because I've done Kickstarters where people pay me money for something that they've not played yet, but here it's also taking like time and opportunity from everything else, which feels like quite a bigger deal. And do you know what I mean?
Like, the first thing that I would say to kind of remember is because people have obviously like put this game towards the top of their selections, that means they're as excited about these potential stories as you are. They think this is cool, and so they'll be excited to bring something to that. Like, you know that everyone who's there wants it to go well. Like, no one is there rooting for it to be bad. So everyone there wants to have a good time together, and everyone thinks this is a cool idea and is excited for it. I think it's totally natural to be like scared. Like, I want to kind of say that don't feel like that's solely on you. I just think that's a natural way to feel. Like, I feel like that a lot with different projects and shows and stuff like that. So I also just want to be like, that's a fair state to be in. And I think basically for a lot of people, especially people who are coming to the Smoke, who either like have LARPed before, or you have to like be a little bit keyed into LARP in order to kind of know when to even get a ticket for the Smoke, right? So these are people who will have some familiarity with this and probably have some familiarity with like playing well with people and supporting each other in play. I think you've got something that a lot of LARP designers don't have, which is you have a really good in-world role for supporting role play, for prompting more role play, for helping support the experience as it happens, because you're the therapist. And sometimes in LARP, it's just like, you just have to kind of let people go and just be like, I don't have any in-world way of like
That's true.
supporting.
And
So I think that's a really good thing you have.
Workshop things, like you said, what do you want from this character to the right of you? That could be something that's done during the therapy session. And sure, we'll need a little bit of before the game starts workshop, but I feel like that could probably be reduced to definitely less than 15 minutes of just saying, okay, which characters are you? And now we've got the first thing where we do the refresh, where we explore what's actually happened. And yeah, I guess I'd have to write up the rules for this short role playing game so that everyone's aware of what's going on. Although, even there, like, I can explain it as the therapist, as you say.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's like, yeah, everyone's negotiating the space together. And I feel like the most important thing I can do is to give people activities to do in pairs or in groups rather than rather than it just being one thread, if you know what I mean. I feel like that's the most important thing.
I feel for me it's having some activities, and the other thing is just like the core thing that feels really interesting here, and I think a lot of players will like enjoy kind of getting, is these are characters who need to heal in some way, but also have big things that are stopping them from healing. And it's that tension. It's that I'm a fighter and I know that what I'm doing is hurting people. I don't know how to deal with problems other than by fighting. And that just immediately creates such a like interesting character space to explore from just like two little things of like, why am I here at therapy? Why do I need to be at therapy? Like, why can't I fix this problem on my own? What is the big problem that I have in expressing emotion or dealing with problems? And even just that, like, that gives people such a rich thing. And I think you'll get a lot from people with just those little prompts. And then, yeah, letting them kind of say, this is something that I would like to get or receive or feel from the person to my right, giving them space to state that themselves rather than that being something pre-written also means that they'll help to shape the game into something they want to play. And in turn give them a better time.
I like it. Thank you very much. I feel definitely more confident. I feel like I've written down a few notes, and yeah, some things that each character will have on their own character sheets, let's call it. And yeah, what is your objective? What does healing look like for you? And what is stopping you from healing? What is that barrier? Is it that other people don't give you the space, and now you've got to learn how to fill this space? Is it that you're too single-minded? Is it that you're, always bringing other people down because you're the big black dog of depression? And which have I played For the Queen? Asks Alex. I haven't personally. Given that I've got very limited time, I'm not sure now is the time for me to be doing research, but I appreciate the kind of pointer. Is there a quick epithet that you want to, or takeaway that you want to share? Please feel free to do so in the comments. Have you played this one, Chloe?
No, I've heard For the Queen, and I've heard it recommended to me a couple of times, but it's one of the many games that are like on my list. So unfortunately, yeah, I can't provide a kind of little overview, but yeah, if Alex is able to.
But at this point, I think that we should wrap up. And do you have a question for me that you would like to ask me, or indeed anyone watching? So if you do have a question of the day, little question before we go on our way. Question of the day.
This is just a general question. What's your favorite flower?
What's my favorite flower? Oh, the first one I'm going to say is orchid. True story. I drew lots of orchids in when I was at college, and I went back to college to study graphic design, and then did a whole bunch of orchidy stuff. They made a little animation with orchids, and I think that studying them and drawing them over and over was like, you know what, these are really cool flowers. It's not just a circular bit, and then there's not any rotational symmetry, which I find really interesting because almost every other flower, it you could spin it 180 degrees and it would look like itself. You probably wouldn't be able to tell. But an orchid, it's got a very definite, this is the top, this is the bottom, which is really interesting to me.
Nice. That's a really good answer.
Ivan, yep, I will allow this question. Favorite colors? I like wearing red, and I also play purple, and just pretty colors in games, whatever is aesthetically pleasing. I will actually quite often go for unpainted wood, if that's an option, rather than the painted ones. But your favorite flower, to all those people in the comments, what is your favorite flower? Let us know. And Chloe, do you have a favorite flower? I also do like sunflowers. They go so tall and just, wow, that's cool.
I don't. I'm gonna say for now it changes a lot, but heartsease, which is I don't know if it's technically a herb and not a flower, but basically it's edible flowers, and they're kind of yellow and purple and white, and they're very, very pretty. My favorite flower is always something that I have growing on my balcony, because it'll just be like a thing I see every day that I like. And at the moment, my favorite one is heartsease.
That is totally fair. It sounds like a lovely, beautiful thing to garnish a salad or something with.
Oh yeah.
Alex wants to tell us about For the Queen. Says it's a super simple storytelling RPG. Just pull a prompt that suggests how to expand on your relationship with the Queen and your background in the situation and so forth. The world and character building is pretty much the whole game. So I think Alex is saying that if I study this, I might have some ideas for character building, but at the same time, given the limited amount of time I have, I feel like if I did any more research, that it would just be distracting me from the actual work. I feel like at this point, I do have to say, okay, this is what I need for the characters, this is what I need to write down, and just write down some words. I feel like that's the best thing I could be doing right now if I want to finish this thing. And at this point, the question I asked to everyone is, over to you. What are you up to? You can share possibly if you want to. Is there something that you're going to do after this stream? Something that you want to get done? Something that you're excited to get done? Something that's fun and frivolous, or something that's super serious? Please share. I promise that I care. Chloe, what are you up to today?
I don't think I can say what I'm up to today. Ooh. Because it's work on some big projects, but it's all a little bit hush hush.
NDA.
Yeah, it's not official NDA, but I'm like, I know that I shouldn't be saying what it is publicly. But cool game designy stuff. But aside from that, I'll probably spend a bit of time on a game that I'm working on, which I'm playtesting at the moment. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's called Transmission, and it's a kind of cosmic horror LARP for Zoom, which is all about being in the Great Storm of 1987, where there were blackouts across the country, and you're a group of friends on holiday. There is a blackout, but suddenly the TV starts playing teletext. And the teletext is being a bit weird, and maybe it seems to be talking back to you and glitching in odd ways, because I've like made my own teletext emulator that I live edit whilst the game's happening, because I just play teletext while people play people, and I'm having so much fun with that. I did the first full-length playtest the other week, and it worked. It still needs like some developing, but I'm having a lot of fun with that right now.
That sounds fantastic. And personally, I am going to be spending a wee bit of time with parents and doing a wee bit of work. Tomorrow I'll be doing hopefully quite a bit more work. I am up in Glasgow trying to see parents, and so I'm going to balance that with getting this stuff written and doing stuff in general. And Alex says, yeah, I understand things are fairly time sensitive. Ivan Rivera, I appreciate all the questions. If you do want to know the answer to this, I will happily tell you tomorrow or on Thursday. If you come in at the start, there is a section dedicated to questionably quick questions, and but you could probably already find this out. I'm not shy about my favorite game, but I'll leave that for you to discover tomorrow, maybe. Um, but at this point, I'd like to recap and wrap up before we finish up. So, to recap and wrap up, we've chatted about quite a bit. We've chatted about UK Games Expo being brilliant, and poetry things and like book writing conventions being intense with other people, and doing a massive mega game of conversing about how to create a new independent Mars in a hypothetical future. We've talked about the nature of LARP, what is important to people, how it's not just about this is your relationship, but it's also about what you want out of these people. That gives you a lot to get on with. I did a quick showing of my LARP written. Let me click that. Of my LARP written so far. This will all be very much changed, and I will probably have a big stream of things. But yes, about having multiple therapy sessions, and my idea of how to start off with a bit of kind of mock D&D and then end up on that, just saying, yeah, roll a bunch of dice whenever you're having an interaction, and then your opponent decides what happens. The dice don't mean anything. I actually quite like that, so I'm going to run with that because it feels fine. And yeah, I'm excited. I had some great ideas from Chloe and from Alex of what's the main barriers for people, because games are all about these are what you're aiming for, and this is what is stopping you from overcoming that, from achieving that. And then we also talked about, yeah, just flowers and enjoying life and NDAs and fun work things. Is there anything else that you'd like to give a shout out to at this point, Chloe?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
That's totally fair. Well, if you want to check me out, I am obviously Stuff by Bez everywhere. On stuffbybez.bigcartel.com is where you can buy my stuff. Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube. You can watch or read my stuff or look at my photos. Stuffbybez.com/Discord. Talk along, and stuffbybez.com/stream, so you can find out what the future streams are all about. Tomorrow I'll be chatting to Alan Paul about UK Games Expo, about our different experiences, having a wee bit of a catch-up, contrasting and comparing. On Thursday it will be a quick show, as will be Friday, and like honestly the weekends will be, hey, I'm at the Smoke, and yeah, here's what's happening. I might have to do those streams like an hour early, depending on the schedule. I will just work that out in the next couple of days. But please share, spread the word. I will do a proper recap of everything on the Monday to let you know how it went down. And thank you very much, everyone. And if people wish to find you, Chloe, where do you like to be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Chloe Mashiter. You can find me on Facebook if you search for roll flip draw, roll/flip/draw. And you can also find me on Itch, which is also roll flip draw. I do have a very defunct Twitch page, which is roll flip stream. But because I have some work that's making my life a bit more consistent over the coming months, I might start streaming on there again. Normally my streams are me improvising ukulele songs about people's tabletop game characters or LARP characters. So people tell me about their characters and then I make up songs dedicated to them. So actually my Twitch might be worth checking out in the coming weeks. We'll see.
That sounds awesome. And Ivan, no apology is needed. It's all good. And I do enjoy some video games, but I do mainly focus on non-digital stuff. Again, no apology needed, and I'm glad to have you listen to us, and it would be lovely to have you back at some point in the future. But for now, the only thing left to say, as always, is lots of love and bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye bye, everyone.